I think this is going to be the first part of BFM this month because we missed last month. We're going to do it live, dude. I think we're just going to
today's a good day for BFM because did you see that tweet I sent in the group chat?
Eyedea, yeah.
Today, October 16th,
dude, it got me it got me feeling, man. We can start with that actually. We actually start with that because I do have a lot to say about that, dude. So we got me, we got you, Danny, we got Gerry.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's the way to start. Okay, so what the fucking date is it? Okay, it's October 17th, 2020. It's a fucking year, dude. And you know what?
Crazy year,
dude. Yeah. You know what, man? Honestly, I think at this point, what puts me into perspective is the documentary I still haven't seen, which fucking fucks me, dude. It's the world has no idea. The world has no idea. And then I saw so many posts, the one you shared in our group chat, and the one I saw from Sadistic with no idea. Which we talk about Eyedea as the hip hop artist who was just so ahead of his time. He was his own world of hip hop, and it just. Fuck, man. Like, it just, like, in looking at it now that it's been 10 fucking years, it just, I mean, we're not going to really talk about it the whole time, but just the premise of it is just,
he had some stuff he wanted to say.
Dude, but he okay, I get that, and I really, and I agree, but at the same time, he's been saying it the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you look at it from the premise of where he was going at from the beginning, where he was working with Slug and all the street cats, like, up until By the Throat, like, he already knew what he was saying.
I might go so far as to compare it sort of to Linkin Park with Chester.
I'm going to agree with you on that because there's so much. It's one of those things where there's so much to unpack that you can literally go through it for years and years on end. Yeah. And it's not that like
it won't hit until something big happens to that person.
Correct, yeah. but also at the same time, like you don't have to wait for that one big hitter. Yep. Like you can listen to the context and be like, yeah, I get it. I fully understand. And I feel that's where Sadistic, who was a good friend of Eyedea, who had put a verse into Ultraviolet, which was, I think, 4, 5, 6 years ago or so.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Of Chemical Burns, where he put Eyedea in there and literally is, I think, one of the most trending songs on Sadistic's Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because of Eyedea, maybe not. But if you look at it as a whole, as a piece, it's something that just, it resonates. You know, it's like you're watching a 70s to 80s horror film for the first time. Like, you have no idea what The Blob's about. You have no idea it's something from outer space. You have no idea what Michael Myers is supposed to do. You have no idea what the context is, but it pulls you in.
You have no idea.
Exactly. You have no idea. And I feel that at this point in time, it's so... I haven't seen the documentary yet, and I really feel like I've been sleeping on it for so long, but I really feel that the idea of the documentary is to feel the world for what it is, you know, like take it for what it is and then have your own experience.
You know, you put me to Eyedea, like a few years back, checked out his music, part of the mainstream, but not big enough to be noticed.
I feel like, not to interrupt you, I feel like it was kind of like how we all grew up as a group, like listening to Atmosphere. It was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of different, but it's kind of new, but it's not really new. It's kind of old. And I feel like Eyedea fell very much under that radar. Like people didn't really know, you know, like they heard certain things, but they didn't really know who the cat was. And I feel that the ones who decided to dig into the grave, they saw that, hey, this is not just Slug. This is not just whoever the fuck it was, you know, whatever cats were over there in Philadelphia at that time where he was growing up in. This was an idea. And this was something that he grew up into be. And I think I've told this to you guys before. He never lost the flow. He never lost the battle. He was always someone who consistently was at the ready. Like, we talk about these things like RPG kind of setting. Like, he was ready for the boss. He was ready for the mid boss. He was ready for the last boss. He was always ready to throw something out into the picture.
Yeah.
And for him to be lost in the way that it was lost, one, to me, you guys can disagree or not, I feel that kind of made sense, especially with the way By the Throat went. But at the same time, I feel it was setting a stage. setting a stage for different things. And in particular, the one that comes to mind is Aerospace. Because it's Aerospace always says, oh, he's a sad rapper. He does all these sad things. But if you look at it in its musical form, it's very similar to what Eyedea did. Very similar to, hey, I have an idea and I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to go on about it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. That's what Aero does. And he does it phenomenally, just like Eyedea did. You know, but now here we are, 10 years later, and I find myself still listening to Oliver Hart more than ever.
When you showed me Eyedea and I started checking it out, I remembered when you brought up Slug, and that
which was
that was back in like 2007, 2008.
Exactly.
So you were already on the jump, and but by
exactly.
then,
and not to cut you off before you go on, you know, Slug, if you know, you listeners don't know, was Atmosphere before he became Atmosphere, before he emerged with DJ Ant. So Slug was, you know, an MC on his own, along with Eyedea and along with a whole bunch of other cats. But when he met with DJ Ant, they then merged into Atmosphere. But go ahead and go on.
Yeah, so by then you already knew the history by the time you introduced me to what Eyedea was. And, you know, the first thing I always think when it comes to you listening to a new artist or just a new song in general, you're checking out the production. You're seeing what's going on with the instrumentals, who produced it specifically. It doesn't matter as long as it sounds cool. That got you invested, right?
Exactly.
And that's how it was at first. And then, of course, the further you go into listening to more of the tracks,
you dig
going
into
to all
hole.
the albums, you start listening to what they're saying.
Exactly.
And that's where I have to agree with, like, yeah, a lot of things that Aerospace is kind of saying is stuff that kind of Eyedea was saying, you know?
I mean, if you look at, what the fuck, I'm gonna look it up right now. If you look at this, because I know you really like this album, Danny.
Is it By the Throat?
No, it's not By the Throat. Hold on. Let me find it, because it's not Firstborn either.
It's probably A&E then.
It is A&E.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you first introduced me to Aerospace, you know what song really made me feel like Aero, whether he listened to Eyedea or not, this is the vibe I get? Paradise.
Oh yeah,
from E&A, from Eyedea and Abilities. And when I first listened to Paradise, I'm like, wow, this is a really solid, really fucking strong song. And then when I first listened to Aerospace, I think one of the first songs I listened to was Zenith, which actually made it so much more of a juxtaposition. Like, holy fuck, dude, we're now going to two different worlds, but the same parallel. And it really put me into perspective. Like, I'm upset Eyedea did what he did, but in my own way, I listen to Aerospace so much because I feel that, and I really hope he doesn't do the same thing he did. With certain paths of his musical route, I feel so much Eyedea, and I'm going to go on a whole different tangent with this, but I feel that with that mindset, now we look at EXO as a whole. We have an idea in there, and we can look at Ramona. We can look at the growth of that, and we can look at Solar Flare, and we can look at what was the one that they just did with Square?
Skin.
Exactly. It was so many different moving parts that made the magic that happened. And I was never a big fan of hip hop. I'll be honest with everybody. I think I've said it before. If I'm not, I'll say it now.
No, I can see that.
I was never a big fan of hip hop, but certain things made me really think, like, you know what? Hip hop is a form. It's something that if you don't take a liking to, it takes a certain kind of heart to. And if you can appreciate hip hop, now you can appreciate exactly what it stands for, which is, and I always fuck this up, and I wish Junior was here to correct me on it, but you have hip hop, you have b-boying, and you have one other factor. And those are the three factors of hip hop. And I can't fucking remember, but you have those three factors. And when I really started getting into hip hop, and then I met Junior, he had mentioned it to me, and I go, that's why I enjoy it. That's why it means so much to not just myself, but to other people. And that's where it really makes the fucking difference, you know? And now here we are 10 years later from Eyedea, who's just, I mean, he's always going to be my favorite hip hop artist, my favorite rapper, because the way that he said things and the way that I mean, this is just my pride speaking, the way that he never really lost a battle. It's something that always stood out to me, that it's almost like an RPG. Like, you grind so hard that you're never going to lose.
Yeah. And I think that's what's important with hip hop. You know, I can see that you weren't initially a fan just based on like the other genres of music yet. for me, I've always been there. And, the most important thing when it comes to hip hop is the lyricism, obviously.
Right. And not to interrupt you, Danny, but I feel that I think that's why I fell in love with hip hop over the last 3-4 years, because when I really sat there and listened to not just the beat and the grind, but when I really listened to the lyricism of these hip hop artists, like if you to mention MF Doom, Sadistic, Eyedea, of course, Atmosphere, Tribe Called Quest, like, I mean, obviously the big hitters, but also some smaller hitters. When I really sat there and listened to it, I understood, you know what? I was under the misconception that if you were into hip hop, that it was completely hot garbage. But when I really sat there and listened to it, I knew, no, you're performing an art. You're not giving me a song. You're performing an art that's different than what I would get from somebody performing, like a whole live band, so to speak. Like it's a completely different vibe, and I've seen live bands, I've seen orchestras, and I've seen hip hop artists, but a hip hop artist, you literally play the show. You literally have your role to play versus you're in an orchestra, specifically video game orchestra, because that's all I've seen for the most part. But like you're there for the theme, you're there for the song, and you play it and it's done, and you move on to the next one. And then you have a live show with an actual artist, and they're like, hey, we're gonna plays a couple songs and then move on, right? But to me, with every single hip hop artist I've seen, it's kind of like, fuck that, fuck this. We're gonna play our show. We're gonna do what we think we want to do, and fuck everything else. And that's where I feel that over the last few years, I've really grown to appreciate hip hop, because it's not to please anybody, and it's very, and correct me if you guys think I'm very wrong on this, but to me, I look at hip hop as a very punk thing. And I say punk in the way that what punk was meant to be, which is fuck the man, fuck this shit, we're going to do what we want to do. And that's how I see the two at the end of the day.
To be fair on the genre that is hip hop, during that time,
the early 2000s,
or like mid 2000s to late 2000s.
Right. To where we are now.
As far as it came to me personally, is you always pay attention to what's popular.
That's where we all grew up, like as far as the folks here, speaking their piece. And I feel at that point, that's where, it's a fucking meme, but it's legit to what we're really talking about. Kids Bop.
Hell yeah.
But the Kids Bop showed like one part of the demographic, and when it came to the real demographic, that's where
so that was still the era of where the popular section of hip hop was still very dominant in the industry,
things of that nature,
right? And when I was listening to hip hop, it was from what I've always known, which was the stuff my uncles always played when I was at home, and that's like 80s, 90s, early 2000s, Run DMC,
right? Exactly.
EPMD,
right?
Everything like that.
It's rap mostly, but it's just like that's just me.
Right? No, exactly, and it's very much the same. Where I think I've said it before in the podcast, if not, I'll say it now. Where my father was Frank Sinatra's chef, so I didn't grow up with the grunge. I didn't grow up with like all these things. I grew up with jazz. Same. So when it came to other kinds of music, I was very much foreign to it.
Shit that they would play at clubs back then.
Exactly.
Like at the old Zeldas in Palm Springs.
100%.
So it's like, different backgrounds and shit,
100%.
But we all like ended up in the same place where like you have to like kind of appreciate hip hop for what it is and like the lyricism, like what you
exactly.
said.
Well, I'm gonna take a step outside of it before you make your piece, Danny. We've all had the same denominations, demographic, and you know what? It's literally, I may or may not have said on the podcast before, but I have a Winnie the Pooh bear tattooed. And sometimes all you have to do is reach 100 Acre Wood. And the people that you meet in 100 Acre Wood, that's your family.
Yeah, Eyedea was popular, but I don't think he was popular as far as what the
he was slept on.
Entertainment side wanted him to be, right? Like when you look at hip hop today, it's very different to what it was.
Well, you have to have the viewership in this day and age. You have to have viewership, and that point where you and I
people
were
have
like,
to be in the know.
Right. Well, okay. Hold on. Let's break it down. Okay. In this day and age, you have to have the viewership. It's like a YouTube channel. You have to have the viewership. In that day and age, what we're referring to with Eyedea, you have to have known the person or like known of the person. You have to like understand what's going on. And beforehand, you would have to have been an old cat to know what was going on, because those old cats in that point in time, as far as my understanding, wouldn't say nothing unless they made a whole group like Wu-Tang. You know, like you couldn't find old school Method Man without a doubt until he came into Wu-Tang, you know? And that's the whole thing, is that's what I really love about hip hop, is that it's a whole American I say American really loosely, but it's a whole American Homelander history, because there's so many intertwining parts.
I don't know. Have you listened to Japanese hip hop?
I have, yes.
I have,
bro.
yeah.
But at the same time,
Fuck yeah.
But at the same time, this is exactly what I'm saying.
Have you heard collabs in Japanese? Dude.
Right, no, but that's exactly what I'm saying though, is that there's a certain demographic that just stops. Because folks of other part in the world, they don't know any better. They just stick to what they know.
Yeah.
Which again,
there is some kind of certain soul in it where it's just like you can't really get it from any other.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not dogging on it at all, because there was one great Swedish band that I found out about until somebody told me about it, you know, many years ago. And I was hooked on them. But it wasn't until somebody told me, somebody educated me to it, that actually brought me to that point. And that's where I really want to focus on the whole hip hop thing, because I mean, I listen to hip hop in my own way, but until I met Danny, I didn't really listen to hip hop. Until I met Junior, I didn't really listen to hip hop, you know, because they educated me in ways that I didn't really understand. Like the same way Akil educated me in hip hop, you know?
Yeah.
Like I would never have understood it in the way that I should if I didn't have the exposure.
My love for Kendrick wouldn't have come if I hadn't met Akil.
Yeah, that's very true.
The strip club is one way or another, but you know, like, but yeah, you know, like it's that's the power of music. And I know you and I have talked about this before, Danny, because you had your teacher in your guitar class, and I had my own path for my music, and it melded in its own way, you know. And that music is something that's just so powerful and profound. You guys felt
the same thing when you guys
exactly, you know, and that's the thing. It's the same way when you and I first played music together, Gerry. You know, it's like okay, this is exactly the formula, and we're gonna play on it over and over again. Whether something happens if we're not, who fucking cares? We're having fun.
What matters
we're enjoying the tunes, we're enjoying what's coming out of it, we're enjoying the creation. And that's where I feel I'm going to go back to the whole Eyedea thing. When he made music, as far as what I've listened to, and I've listened to 99% of everything he's done, he was just having fun. He was just having a good old time. Yeah, sometimes he really had something to say, but he got it out in his own way. You know, and that's not an easy thing to do for a lot of people. You know, like let's look at Elliott Smith, who was a phenomenal guitar player for many years, but something happened, whether it was heroin or not, you know, lost himself. You know, let's look at, I know you're going to take a little bit of hit to this, Gerry, but, you know, Chester Barker.
Bennington.
You know, Bennington, thank you. You know, it's hard, you know, like because they understood music at a certain different level.
There's a whole conspiracy podcast we can get into with that.
No, I'm not trying to get. I'm not trying to get into that.
It gets deeper though.
No. I'm not trying to get into that. What I'm trying to get into is that music does things to individuals. It gives you a world that if you couldn't live into before, it now gives you a whole world to live into.
I can pit. It's so weird. Like it's not even hip hop. I can pit Rise Against in that.
Exactly.
Like in the early albums. We all fucking just love.
We all have our own thing. Just like Danny has his Sobies and his fucking lizards. Fucking cunt.
But then like after that, you know? Like after like the first few albums, dude. After that shit, I don't know. After me, it just kind of went downhill. After that.
Well, I think it's like it's a status quo that you have to kind of try to fill. You know, as we got later into the late 2000s, coming into the 2010s, it's like society's already outgrowing a certain standard of what
you
music
have to look.
Be,
you have to look at it this way, though. From the 70s, okay, hold on.
As much as we love Linkin Park,
it's kind of dirty right now.
No, okay, like, hold on, guys. Look, you have to look at it this way, just like Danny said. and this is unfortunate, and I also mentioned this earlier, it's a demographic, okay? From the late 70s to early 2000s, what was the genre? It was grunge. It was a lot of reverb.
A lot of rock.
It was a lot of rock.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things didn't really coincide with each other. And the few artists, bands that stuck together, those are the only ones who were able to be like, yeah, that's what we're going for. That's what we're doing. And this is what we're doing now. But that wasn't the same way with everybody around the world. Like, we have to you have to put in perspective, like, we are 3 people in a whole world of very billion people, and not everybody got the same message at the same time.
Or 3 different vibrations in a world of vibrations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's that kind of night, folks.
We watched the Two Bears One Cave live show.
Hell yeah.
That inspired. But no, that's exactly what I mean, though. Specifically going with what we were originally talking about, the whole idea thing, like, that's why the documentary was called either The World with No Idea or The World Has No Idea. Because he had made an approach that was so foreign to the hip-hop world at that time. Nobody knew at that moment it was so foreign until years later, where I can say Sadistic made the same jump, K&O made the same jump.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to reach for Vrav at the same time. There's very few Aerospace songs at the same time. Let's go to Atmosphere, who does the same thing. He talks about his family. Let's go to Murs. There's so many routes we can go. But the thing is that it's just understanding the principle of the fact.
Yeah.
Right.
What I understand, what was the quote unquote mainstream back in the day when it came to the music, is when it comes to Eyedea's stylization to production, that's not something that was popular during that era, right? And it was very old. It was not old school, but very like behind what we just left behind, right?
Right.
And that's the hard thing with the push. And that's why I said earlier how it's like, he was popular, but was he popular? Like, he was popular among other artists, but
he's popular
when it comes to the main industry that is the entertainment.
That's where I make the connection of, you have Eyedea, but you have Oliver Hart. And that's where a bridge was made, because people would be like, oh, I like Oliver Hart. Who the fuck is he? And they're like, oh, that's Eyedea.
Also begs the question, like, is the world ready for, was the world ready for,
a new idea?
That kind of,
That's why I think it's called The World Has No Idea.
Exactly.
And that was the era when, I didn't pay attention to mainstream stuff because I was trapped in my own, circle of what I liked.
And neither did I. I did the same
thing.
And
that was the point where I was like on SoundClick, Reverb Nation, all the old shit. Right. And that's where, like, in a sense, that's when music struggled as far as trying to be different from what the mainstream is.
Correct.
Like, when you look at today, it's so much easier now
that's where,
to go a different path.
Right. But that's where I'm going to agree and I'm going to disagree on you, only because of one person, and that's Sadistic. Because Sadistic has been somebody who has followed their own path through and through.
Yeah.
And they've done things that are phenomenal the whole way through. Like, there's a journey. If you look at the discography, just like you look at the Eyedea discography, there's a whole journey going on in there. If you sit there and listen to it, you'll find it and you'll hear it and you'll see it. But going on with what you said, Danny, at that point in time, it's Kids Bop.
I wish the rest of Aerospace fucking Sandra Gahara was on Spotify.
Dude, Aerospace is an interesting case because he's very vocal about a lot of things.
Yeah. But that's where it worked. That's where I feel that's where he succeeds. Because, look, I could sit here and talk about all day long about certain things, about injustices and all these kind of things, right? But the way that he has a scheme about it, and I mean scheme very loosely, like the way that he distributes it with his words and his diction, his lexicon, like I see it, and it's a way that I could never do. And when he does it, like with Charlie Brown the other day.
Yeah, his latest release.
It was his latest release, and it came out literally, I think, like 2-3 days ago. And when I finally heard it, I was like, I understood where you were going, but after hearing Charlie Brown, was a different feeling.
Yeah.
It was entirely different. It put me into a different world where I was not expecting to go into, but I enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Because sometimes I may or may not have said it before, but I feel that the reason why I appreciate Eyedea so much is because it puts me into a world where it's so real.
Yeah.
Where there's no, like, I can't hide from the reality. Which is where I feel, and again, this is me personally, it just makes sense. You know, like you can write me a whole story, but if it doesn't make sense to me, I will never grasp the concept. But if you write me a story or a song or a poem, whatever the case may be, and it makes sense, now I'm more willing, and this is not to say that people are better than others, it's just to say that you're telling a way more engaging story than now I'm sitting here like, well, fuck, I want to know more. I would like to know more. But again, that's not always the case, unfortunately.
Hip hop's a crazy world.
I wish,
with the help of social media,
I wish I got into hip hop.
You know, Spotify, Tidal. You know,
so yeah,
it's
I really the internet kind of like really. Boosts,
you know,
but it's a beautiful thing because look, it's like I showed you a couple of weeks ago, Gerry, like some new music, you know, and that's the beautiful part about it. But at the same time, it's like, how far behind have I fallen from listening to this beautiful thing? You know, like the video I showed you, I think was like 6 to 9 years old. The Baba Bimba.
Yeah, I think that's where the magic comes in. Like, you can hear it now, or you can hear it like when it was made. Like I just fucking figured out who Screaming Jay Hawkins is, and that guy like put so
what that is.
Dude, that guy put so much fucking soul in his music, dude.
That's what we're waiting for. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
But yeah, no, I totally get.
Like, that's what I mean. Like this magic that he just has preserved in song form.
And I feel that's the thing that just is so hard for musicians nowadays. I mean, let's look. We were talking about Eyedea, but let's look at something else that makes a lot of sense to all of us. Let's look at Tower of God, for example. Okay. The only good adaptation of the 3 manhwas that were made, and not only is it like the acceptable adaptation to the anime, but it has a killer fucking soundtrack. I'm still waiting for that Lookism adaptation. And you know what's crazy? As I read an article today before I came here, and Crunchyroll literally said, we are never going to put this 44 track into a physical thing. Why? Because it's too powerful. Because it's too good. And I sat there and I read it and I'm like, well, I'm fucking glad I bought the vinyl. But at the same time, like, that's how I know it's a valid, because I don't need no validation. But when I get a validation and I see that, I'm like, that's fucking great, because I'm not the only one who enjoys it. I know my boys enjoy it. I know people all around the world enjoy it because I see them in the comments every single fucking week.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'm buying your keyboard next month.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. It's so much easier to distribute your music, get it across. Attention recession is so short.
You could literally spend 80 to 300 hours on an 8-track project, and then you put it out there into the world, right?
Yeah.
And then the first comment you get, and you're like, dude, I poured everything into this project, and the first comment you get was, it's hot garbage, dude. What does that do? That's an immediate shot. That's like, okay, whatever, you know? But then I'm going to tell the success story. Kevin Penkin, who did the Tower of God OST, who is my fucking idol at this point, he literally said, he was like, for so many years, I never thought I was going to make it big. And then all of a sudden, I got a job. And the next job I got was with Nobuo Uematsu, who has done all of the Final Fantasy BGMs. And when I saw that and read it, I looked at it like, it doesn't matter where you came from, dude. If you have the heart, you have the heart, and you can do what you need to do. Yep.
Yeah, what's important is the passion, and it really is the amount of hours you put in. You know,
to quote Stand and Deliver. How hard
is your passion?
To quote Stand and Deliver, if you have the ganas, you can do anything.
It's definitely frustrating, though, right?
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, I'm sure.
Aerospace kind of, on his Instagram Live was, he was upset about what the status of the world was at the moment during 2020, and how he's been doing the specific genre of music a lot longer than what Bill and Rav were doing. But Bill and Rav are more popular. But why is that? And of course, there's a lot of factors into there, but I think it just comes to what the grind is. Like, when I first listened to Kill Bill, when Grant shared that first link of Computer Love on my Facebook profile. I was like, whoa, this is crazy, man. Listened to the whole discography, loved it. And then you do what you do, right? You expand. Is there more? And that's how I fell into the whole, essentially lost in SoundCloud, right? There's like so many artists. And I was like, to the point where I almost couldn't keep up because there's just so many people trying to put out their own thing. But it's really hard, man, to get where you want to get when it comes to it, especially when it comes to monetization, especially during that time, which was like 2016, and it was only 4 years ago, but it was definitely different from what it is today. Pay is still kind of pretty crappy when it comes to plays. Like if you're not very successful, like if you don't blow up a lot of plays, the money's really not there. But I mean, that's all with the grind, but that's what I mean. It's easier and it's also harder. It's easier to get your music out there.
It's frustrating.
It really does because you're putting in the hours, you're putting in the work, and everybody's done that, and you're expecting it to be a lot easier than what it is now.
We grew up in a time where we understand the grind, right? We know it's like, hey, you have to do this kind of thing, you have to go through these motions, but in this day and age, in 2020, it's kind of like, oh, if I make one really good trap song, I'm gonna fucking make it big on SoundCloud. No, that's not the fucking case. Like, yeah, sure, you can make one banger. What's gonna happen to you in 3 months, dude? What's gonna happen with the next
that's how it was in the 90s, man. Look at how many artists had single hitters. And then you look at the rest of their music, and it was very similar to how it was with every other artist.
I totally get that. Man. No,
of course I do.
I totally get that, and it doesn't just apply to and this goes with what you just said, Gerry. It doesn't just apply to the hip hop; it applies to the pop, primarily because if you were a rock guy or a grunge guy or whatever kind of denomination that wasn't pop.
All I remember was Who Was Think or hip hop is You.
Exactly. Then now you fall into this fucking pot that if you don't escape from that pot, and I'm not saying that the people who fell into that pot were bad. Who Was Think was badass. Switch was really, really fucking great. 3 Days Grace is fucking legit. Like the list can go on, but if you didn't escape from that pot, exactly.
Yeah.
Then now you're stuck in this realm that it's kind of like, not to make it super anime, but to make it pretty anime. Like now you're stuck in the Kai realm. How are you going to get out of the Kai realm? How are you going to find your way to be like, hey, you know what? I deserve to be in the real world, but not overbear what's going on. You know what I mean? And I feel that that's where the biggest thing happened. And you know what really fucked me up the other day, guys? It really fucked me up. Not the other day, but like a good couple weeks ago. I don't watch TV. I think TV is fucking awful. I think watching things on the telly is fucking great. Like, watch news, watching fucking shows, like whatever. But I walked inside and I was looking at the telly and I saw fucking Kids Bop. I remember standing there, I looked at it and I was like, you fucking kidding me, dude.
Kids Bop is great. What are you talking about?
No, but I remember watching it, like I watched the whole commercial, right?
Yeah.
Which I normally don't do because I'm like, it's the same shit over and over again.
It's a fucking treat.
But when I saw it the whole way through, I had a flashback of like, you know what?
You have to know which one this is. You have to watch all of it.
Not only that, but the kids, like my nephew and niece who were really like all into Kids Bop, I remember looking at them, looking at the fucking shit, and standing there in the back, and I remember watching it, and I'm like, that's their life.
Yeah.
For us, our life was things that don't suck.
Yeah, bro.
But for them, it's like everything that sucks. And I remember standing there, and I'm like, I'm glad.
For real.
I mean, there's two ways. There's two ways to look at it. One of them was, I'm so glad that's not me, and I know real good music at this point. The second half was, I feel terrible for the world, for the world of the people who don't have somebody like me as as somebody in their life to be like, yo, this shit sucks.
I remember like a few Halloweens ago, I was at a couple friends' house and we were watching like old commercials from like way back in the day, right? From 1990s to the 2000s, right? So like after that, so like we saw the first fucking Kids Bop, and let me tell you, that shit was just as horrible as I remembered.
we pay attention more to the music that's not essentially
that has
popular.
substance.
Well, it's
the shit that has substance. The shit that has fucking meaning. The deeper meaning. In
the thing about like what's hard and easy about today is you don't need the industry anymore, right? You can produce your own content.
Yeah,
you're able to monetize it in a certain way.
Before I cut you off way too far,
the rest of the media world doesn't care about independence like that.
Before
right?
I cut you off,
you gotta be on the
way
label.
too far. Let's look at someone who I mentioned earlier, Sadistic. The last album he made, I can't remember the name, and I don't want to throw shame on the people who did it. But he had made an album some time ago, and they were like, "Yeah, dude, we got you. We'll take care of you, blah, blah, blah." And then the album came out, and then all of a sudden, nothing happened. And after the fact, he's like, "You know what, man? It's cool. You can take the fucking money, but I'm going to do my thing."
Yeah.
And ever since he did his thing, it's been nothing but fucking killer. Like, let's look at the last EP he came out with, which was Elysium.
Yeah.
You know, and that was something that I still listen to every single day, ever since it dropped. You know, it's... They're looking for that talent. They're looking for the people who have the heart in the industry that is so hard to find nowadays, because it's so easy to get trapped in the stardust of like, oh, I'm going to make this EP. I'm going to do this thing like that. You know, like,
more self-aware after
yeah, but
years,
you know, the crazy thing is it's more or less still the same, right? Like with Sadistic,
it's still a business.
The thing I appreciate about him is he's able to still put the grind in, put the hard work in.
Yeah.
Because he's able to find his audience that's able to support him, right?
Exactly.
But then when you go look at our boy Mega Ran, you know, he's a great guy.
It's hard.
He's been making moves, you know, for sure. Long time. Yeah. He's finally getting recognition that I think he should have gotten a while ago, but
I agree.
He did a live stream a few months back. I think it was before COVID. I don't really remember, but it was about the latest album that came out, Two Hands Up, that came out this year. And, you know, the obvious question was, oh, is it on Bandcamp? Right? Because Bandcamp's good for independent artists because it pays the most, but it's
your double negative.
It's a double negative. And the reason why is Megran explained it himself. He said, I mean, it's great. Sure, we get paid more there. But where's the audience? Where's the exposure? Exactly.
I don't get my crowd, you know, and that's
that's why he said, like, make sure if you want to grab this, it's going to be on iTunes. It's going to be on the big platforms,
of course,
because
you know, like
we need that recognition to get if you don't to bigger places than we're at now.
But here's the fucked up thing, man, and this is where I really hate the music industry. And I mean, you guys know how much I really want to make music, but this is where I really hate the music industry, is that if you don't hit those numbers, then you're literally just a stick in the ground.
Yeah, you have to be kind of exposed. Like, look at Mark Rebier, and he does improv music live on social media and, you know, at actual venues when they were open back in the day. He was explosive. Sorry. To how he did his music. He was struggling. Right. He was performing at cafes and shit, talking about ass and fucks. Your auntie is hot. Kind of bullshit, right? And then now he's collaborating with Ice-T, but that's because he's explosive, you know?
Exactly.
Mega Ran had
and that's a fucked up thing. That's a fucked up thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is really where I'm going to before we shift gears. This is where I'm really making my peace with this whole fucking thing, is because, but if you don't have the fucking recognition, it doesn't matter how good you are. You can be the best person at what you are in the world, but if you don't have the exposure or connections, you're literally kicking rocks.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, because we've seen so many of these people we've talked about, minus Eyedea, you know, like live at a show, or like we've talked about, you know, their live showings and things like that. And it's so unfortunate, because these are the real artists, you know, these are the people who really spend their time, like, not just looking for a good beat, but really looking for a scheme, like a rhyme scheme that people can follow, that it's not too, I'm going to use obscure very loosely, but, you know, like something that's very playful, obscure, like where people are like, oh, okay, I can listen to that, you know, and then hear it and they're like, well, fuck, dude, that resonates, you know. And it's just so hard in this day and age for a lot of different reasons. But a lot of folks really sat there and listened to hip hop of different genres, they would find a lot of things. You know, that's just me personally. Because that's what happened to me. I was very much against hip hop for a majority of my life. I was very much into jazz and fusion jazz and all these kinds of domination of jazz and classical. But when I first listened to hip hop, I was like, yo, this is good. You know, and I feel that it just has that denomination that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's like I said earlier, it's a lot of things coming into it, a lot of factors as far as like growth comes in, but
right,
that's always a different story for a very specific time and
right,
whatever you're trying to achieve when it comes to your music. You know, it's.
But I think
there's a lot going on.
I think for what we're talking about as far as starting off with the idea, going off into the tangent of like,
well, yes,
appreciating people and then seeing for what they are. I think for the listeners out there, if you go to a convention after the whole COVID thing,
wash your hands.
Wash your hands, 100%. Just like, enjoy yourself, man. You know, because you just don't know, man. Like, just have a good time. Like, I'm not saying go and splurge over a whole bunch of hentai or whatever figures you want. Like, I'm just saying enjoy what you got, dude, because not everybody has the experience to go and do that. Not everybody has a chance to go and do that. And I feel that so much more now since we've been in COVID for what, 6-7 months now?
Yeah, we're getting close to a year. Yeah.
You know, and I primarily travel for work, and to see that happen to me, and I'm limited by the things that happen, it makes me think, you know, like, I'm very much thankful for what I have going on, and I'm very much thankful for the relationships that I have, you know, with my friends. I just hope the folks out there also feel the same way. I'm planning to do a 2-episode this month for the month of October, since we did not do one last month, so be on the lookout. This will definitely be the first one to come. I think the next one's going to be a lot of fun. When we really get down to it, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
To give a good preview,
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
We're going to give a good preview. We have an inside scoop at a film to go and look at, and I think it's going to be a good time.
Ooh,
I think it's going to be something very. I think it's going to fit for the BFM, but it's going to be
oh yeah, it's going to fit for the BFM.
Oh, shut the fuck.
I'm just agreeing. Well, I don't know why you're getting mad.
Yeah.
I'm just agreeing.
Yeah, let me talk about it real quick, because I got
ahead.
the email for this film, and I think it would fit mainly because of I want to say the demographic, but definitely the audience that this movie has seen.
Yeah.
Look at Detachment. I mean,
trees.
I don't know much about what Trees Lounge and the Whackness was as far as like the
I think
the distribution was.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there because I don't think it was very well. I think it was very, very well received, but I think as far as this, film
not
goes,
well received, but like how far did the distribution spread?
I see what you're saying.
When I talk about Detachment, I'm talking about like, this was touring in independent film festivals, and that's what this movie that was brought to our attention
right.
went to, and it won awards.
I'm picking up and down.
And so I think it fits to that because it's not here to appease a demographic.
Yep.
Like kind of like what we were talking about this episode, right?
Just say statement, I guess.
As far as like
it's here to say its own thing.
It's here to say its own thing. It's not here to care about what the majority decides what's good.
Yep.
You know, when it comes to the entertainment industry, right? Like we're saying with music, the content pose of what it is today. Yeah, the mainstream was always important, but there's definitely good stuff that the mainstream never looks at.
Yep.
And this could be one of those films.
Just like the trees. It wasn't
like the trees.
It wasn't like when it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how that movie was distributed, if it went to film festivals, if it went to theaters in a normal release.
No.
You know, I don't know much about that, but
I personally don't think so.
Steve Buscemi was given a shot, and that's all he was given.
Yeah. And, you know, and I feel that that's where I feel that that's where BFM succeeds more in these reviews, because we have Detachment, who, I mean, that's a different scope of the whole matter, where like it succeeded in that kind of world. But we can look at the Whackness, we can look at the Trees, we can look at Annihilation, we can look at the lore of Adam Sandler up until the newest film, you know, and like really pinpoint it to certain different types of demographics, but
And maybe Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker? Maybe.
Yeah, Rush Hour needs to come up soon.
That's next
the
year.
trilogy? Yeah.
No, that's next year, dude.
Yeah.
That's gonna
That's
be
next year?
that's gonna be a really long
Can't
one
wait,
because
man.
we have
February,
to.
March?
No, dude, no. That's gonna be
analyze
January
everything,
because
January?
we have
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Especially the last one, dude.
Dude,
Because I just
no,
remember
agree,
the plot
okay.
to the last one.
Yeah,
No, dude.
man.
I have them all on DVD.
So good.
We're gonna sit there and we're gonna go through them all because there's so much to unpack.
Fuck.
Not just like looking at it like logistically, like there's literally a lot to unpack in those films. But going back to what I was speaking about, I mean, if we were to look at the trifecta that we've mentioned about so many times before, we've got detachment, we got the trees, we got the whackness, right? You know, and I feel that at the end of the day, regardless, it's a preface to what BFM's all about. It really is, because we get into nitty gritty. You know, we get into the parts that are a little bit uncomfortable, but a little bit that make you more comfortable than what you've thought about at the end of the day. You know?
Well, we're fucked up.
I didn't say that.
Are you wrong?
I didn't say that.
Yeah,
but you know, I think that's why BFM is what it is. It's a big fucking mood. We see something and we're like, damn, dude, that shit fucks, you know, like, and then we collaborate on it and we're like, hey, you know what? That's actually something that put me on my seat, you know? And I think that with the start of this and now falling into the end, I think that's the perfect segue into the next portion.
You know what? I knew one of the baddest motherfuckers in every sense of the word to ever live.
In my head, I picture him spinning on his head because he was one of the dudes that knew how to do that.
When I met him, he was already doing music. He was Little Mikey. Everybody knew him because he could freestyle so well, and he was 14.
There's just way too many who were way too involved and sucking the goddamn life out of them.
There was a gun scare at one moment that cleared the room and made everybody go running. I remember me and Aesop ended up in the basement.
But this is the kind of dude he is. He doesn't want to go to the strip club. But he'll go with 40 dudes. He'll be the only one to leave with a stripper.
The ladies call me Little Mikey, but if we learn anything from Titanic, it's not the size of the boat, it's how many people drown to death when it crashes into an iceberg.
He really thought he could beat it. He really thought he could outthink it. He really thought that his philosophies could make a difference to this shit. Look at this shit.